Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I had a subscriber make a comment which I'm going to flip in here for you guys, and he's basically saying, look, why are you dropping the weight so fast? I don't understand on your deadlift. What's up with you using a mixed grip? That's how most people tear a bicep. So let me put on my +5 out of weaponsmithing, work on scaling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. Now I know this is covering something very briefly that I've covered quite a few times in the past, but I'm always putting up training footage from time to time, and when I do, invariably I get people who come in and they're like, oh, what you're doing on the deadlift is dangerous. And actually, I think you'll find if you talk to most experts, the way I do my deadlift is actually the safest way to do it. The reason is I am oftentimes doing relatively fast negatives. Unless I'm doing very, very low volume and very low reps. Like sometimes if I come in and I only pull 495, 500, 480 for a triple and call it a day, I might lower it a little slower. But that's because I'm not doing very much workload, and I have a lot of lighter days like that with deadlifting. I don't come in and go all out all the time. But if I am doing any sort of significant workload, relatively heavy weight, anything like that, I lower the weight relatively quick. But people need to understand, even when I'm almost skipping the negative, I'm not gripping the bar tight and letting it bounce me at the bottom. I'm almost letting it free fall. The difference is, I believe that outside of the touch and go deadlifts, which can cause herniations in the disc if done incorrectly, where guys drop it fairly quick or even control and bounce it and re-come off the floor very, very fast without any pause or resetting at the bottom, I think that causes disc herniations. But outside of that, it's my opinion that doing too many negatives on the deadlift because of the nature of the movement can severely fatigue your lower back, interfere with your ability to train, and lead to injuries, overuse injuries in your lower back due to it not being able to recover correctly. What people need to understand, when you talk about eccentric loading of a muscle, there are some muscles that are going to benefit from this more than others. And I agree with people, eccentric loading can be a valuable hypertrophy tool, but you could do concentric only, meaning only lifting the weight and dropping it to the floor, and still develop maximal muscle mass if you do enough workload. Eccentric loading has its place for building hypertrophy, for building up muscles, but there are muscles to which it can be problematic. And that's because eccentric loading is more difficult to recover from. And that can be a downside of it. And the lower back is one of those muscles that if you overly fatigue it and it can't recover, it can mess up your entire ability to train. And when you train like I do, I train for full body strength, full body power, full body speed. The problem you run into, I don't train on a body part split. My lower back is going to get worked in every single workout I do, and I can't run around with it so fatigued from doing slow negatives on the deadlift that I let that one exercise, which is an important exercise, interfere with my overall training and risk me hurting my lower back. All right, it's just not worth it to me. And a lot of lifters feel the same way. If you guys recall, Elliot Hulse, who has been historically was the most famous strength training YouTuber. Notice I didn't say fitness YouTuber. He focused heavily on strength training. You guys see videos of Elliot Hulse doing 600-pound deadlifts in his own garage gym that he owns, where he turns loose at the top, pulls it and releases at the top. There's a reason for that. What Elliot is doing is actually very smart. And if you own the floor you're dropping the weight on, I would oftentimes recommend doing that. I don't recommend you do that in a commercial gym. You're probably going to get thrown out. But if you have a facility that will allow you to pull and release without a problem, that actually, in my opinion, is the best way to deadlift because you're focusing purely on the concentric end. You're doing the deadlift to build full body concentric power. If you want to build eccentric strength, there are other exercises you can use for that. That's not what the deadlift is great at. And those slow eccentric reps simply over fatigue the lower back with no payoff that's worth it, in my opinion, and that just leads to injuries. It can lead to messing up with your whole strength training program because it'll affect your cleans, your push presses, all your overhead pressing. It can even negatively affect your ability to row. It can mess up your whole routine if you let your lower back get too fatigued from doing that. So there's a reason people who do a lot of serious strength training oftentimes do full drops completely on the deadlift or fairly quick negatives. There's a reason for that. A lot of people in the bodybuilding world don't grasp that. Now, when it comes over to the mixed grip thing, that gets brought up too. There are potential risk associated with the mixed grip. All right, that is most people who tear a bicep, it is torn doing a mixed grip, and it's usually their supinated hand. All right. The reason for that, though, is number one, people not deloading correctly, not listening to their body, pushing their connective tissue beyond its limits. Number two, I honestly believe that is largely a strength issue regarding joint angle specificity. I think that most likely occurs in people who do not ever train their biceps through a stretch position, meaning people who do a lot of cheat curls, people who do a lot of partial curls. You see guys who they'll get up even in the preacher thing and they don't ever come all the way down on their curls. They don't ever do dead hang chin-ups. All right, you're not strengthening your biceps to be strong at the stretch position at the bottom. And you need to understand, strength in different muscles carries over only a certain percentage from different joint angles. It doesn't always carry over completely. So if you don't train that muscle and that connective tissue to be strong at the very bottom and to be stretched under load, that I honestly believe accounts for a large number of the bicep tears on the deadlift. It's not training the bicep itself correctly in a way that makes that muscle strong through a full range of motion. I honestly believe dead hang chin-ups, which I'm actually doing a lot of at home these days. I do, like I did yesterday, I did 30 dead hang chin-ups in home, just my body weight. But I do each one for a 1 count at the bottom when I do that now, because quite frankly, I feel like that's one of the best things you can do for your biceps. People who want to do a curl, if you want to reduce your risk of a bicep tear, incline curls, where you go all the way down and stretch and come back up, where you're sitting back at an incline bench, I believe is one of the best isolation exercises for preventing tears on the deadlift. That and just learning to listen to your body, listen to your connective tissue, know when to deload when you feel any sort of inflammation, and being smart about your training. The mixed grip isn't inherently dangerous. The mixed grip becomes dangerous when you don't have mobility through the biceps, you haven't trained them correctly at the bottom, or when you don't listen to your body, you don't deload correctly and you train with excessive workloads and you get connective tissue inflammation and overuse, which then makes it weaker and more prone to tearing. So it's a whole combination of bad things that contributes to this type of injury. This injury doesn't just always happen in isolation. All right, this happens through a lot of different things going on. And there's other methods you can use to reduce your chance of bicep injuries. A big one of them is doing things like more deficit deadlifts. Doing more training on the deadlift where you're using a lighter weight sometimes to build the same amount of strength and muscle mass. All right, that can actually be a useful tool for all of that also, because people usually tear their biceps on a max deadlift. That's generally where it happens. Not always, but most of the time. Too much weight, too often, with too much volume. Or sometimes just attempting a PR and the connective tissue isn't ready for it. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time, and I'll probably flip in a few clips of me doing some deadlifts for you guys.